My stepsister framed me and got me kicked onto the streets at 16, then married my high school boyfriend and bragged about it 30 years later. So I showed up unannounced and made her entire life crumble in front of her family. I was 13 when my dad moved us into Amelia's house. She was his new wife and had 2 kids of her own. Juliana was my age, and Sam was 8. The day we moved in, I was carrying my last box up the stairs when I looked up to see Juliana staring at me like I was an invasive species in her perfect garden. That look stayed. It was like she had decided before I even said hello that I didn't belong. I walked into my room and saw it was half the size of hers. My box of my late mother's watchmaking tools, the one thing I cared about, had been crushed when Juliana accidentally stepped on the box. No one said anything about it, and I was too scared to. Dinner that night was weird. Amelia, a successful art dealer, introduced everyone like it was a gallery opening. When my dad said I was good with my hands, Juliana stood up and started pulling out her equestrian trophies from the living room shelf, one after another, until the table was covered. She didn't say anything, just looked at me and smiled like she'd won something. The next few years were more of the same. Juliana would borrow my tools, say I didn't do my chores when I did, take credit for repairs I did around the house, and tell people at school I smelled like oil or that I cried myself to sleep. She was good at making people believe things. Everyone liked her. She was funny, popular, always had a joke ready. I was quiet, kept to myself, and helped Sam with his homework when no one else would. He was the only one in that house who liked having me around. Things got worse when I started dating this guy, Leo, at school. He was new and sweet and laughed at my dumb jokes. He liked how quiet I was. That drove Juliana crazy. She tried asking him out before me, and he turned her down. She never got over it. One afternoon, I got home and Juliana said she'd lost her phone. She asked me to help her look for it. I followed her upstairs, and she told me to check under my bed while she went to check the laundry. I didn't think much of it until 20 minutes later when she came back with our mom. She walked in shouting. Juliana was behind her with this look on her face I still remember, like she couldn't wait to watch the next 5 minutes. Amelia marched over to my bed, flung open my wardrobe, and pulled out a small, antique pocket watch. My mother's secret heirloom. My stomach dropped so fast I couldn't breathe. I told her I didn't put it there. I had no idea how it got there. I looked over at Juliana, and she was fake shocked, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Sam was crying and kept asking why I took his stuff. Amelia didn't ask questions. She grabbed me by the collar and dragged me out of the house before I could even grab my shoes. She threw me against the wall in the driveway and screamed that I was a thief and needed help. Then she shoved me to the ground and locked the door behind me. My dad didn't even fight for me. I remember standing there, barefoot, staring at the porch light. I knocked once and again, then I gave up. I slept in a porta potty at the park that night. Nobody came to get me the following day, and I honestly thought I'd never see any of them again. 30 years passed by. The only thing I heard was that Juliana somehow ended up marrying Leo, but not much else. Until last week. I came home from work, my husband, David, looking like he'd seen a ghost. He handed me a printed email, an email that was from Sam. I didn't want to read it. I hadn't spoken to him in 30 years, but he told me I needed to. It was long, but the important part was this. Juliana got drunk last weekend. She and her friend were talking, and my name came up. She started bragging about how she set me up and how she took my guy. Said I probably died on the streets. Said like a joke. Leo was there in the next room, and he finally heard the truth. He called Sam. Sam spent all weekend trying to find me, and he did. He wrote that he was sorry, that he never forgot what happened, that he missed me and wanted to come meet my family again. But the whole time reading that email, there was one thing on my mind. I should be over it, but Juliana ruined my life and took everything from me. I was coming back, and I was getting more than just revenge. I read the email twice and closed the laptop. David was watching me carefully. "Are you okay?" he asked. I wasn't. I felt like someone had ripped open an old wound and poured salt in it. All those feelings I'd buried, the abandonment, the betrayal, the helplessness, came flooding back. But mixed in with all that pain was something else, something hot and sharp. Anger. She married Leo. I said finally. That detail kept sticking in my brain. After ruining my life, Juliana had gone on to marry the one good thing I'd had in that house. David knew some of my history. I told him the basics when we got serious. That I'd been kicked out as a teenager, that my stepsister had set me up, that my dad had chosen his new family over me. But I'd never told him all the details. It hurt too much to talk about. Now I found myself telling him everything. About my mother's tools, about the constant sabotage, about Leo, and how he was the first person who seemed to see me, about that final day when everything fell apart. I talked until my voice was hoarse. When I finished, David reached across the table and took my hand. "What do you want to do?" he asked. That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Part of me wanted to delete the email and pretend I never saw it. Another part wanted to write back, just to Sam, maybe try to have some kind of relationship with the only person from that house who'd been decent to me. And then there was the part of me that wanted to drive to wherever Juliana lived now and confront her. I didn't respond to the email that night or the next day. I went to work, came home, helped the kids with homework, all while this storm was brewing inside me. David didn't push, but I could tell he was worried. On Thursday, I finally wrote back to Sam. Just a short message, saying I'd received his email and needed some time to process it. I gave him my phone number and said he could call if he wanted to talk. He called that same night. It was weird hearing his voice, a grown man's voice instead of the little boy I remembered. We talked for almost 2 hours. He filled in some of the gaps from the last 30 years. My dad and Amelia had stayed together, though their marriage had been rocky. My dad had tried to find me at first, Sam said, but Amelia convinced him I was better off wherever I'd gone. Juliana had become a successful interior designer, taking over Amelia's firm, marrying Leo right after college. They had 3 kids now. Sam had gone to community college, became a nurse, married a woman named Tina. I always knew something wasn't right about that night, he told me. Even as a kid, I remember thinking it didn't make sense that you would take my stuff. You were always so nice to me. I asked him if he'd told our dad about Juliana's confession. He hadn't yet. He wanted to talk to me first, see what I wanted to do. What about Leo? I asked, trying to sound casual, but my heart was pounding again. Sam got quiet for a moment. He left her, he said finally, packed a bag, and went to stay with his sister. He's filing for divorce. I didn't know how to feel about that. Leo was just a high school boyfriend. We barely dated. It shouldn't matter to me what happened in his marriage. But somehow it did. After I hung up with Sam, I sat on our back porch for a long time, just thinking. David came out and sat beside me. "I want to see them," I said finally. "All of them." I wanted to look me in the face after what they did. David squeezed my hand. "Then that's what we'll do." We made plans to drive to my hometown the following weekend. It was about 3 hours away. Sam arranged everything. He'd get my dad to his house for what he called a family meeting. He didn't tell him why, just that it was important. Juliana would be there, too, though she didn't know I was coming. Leo wouldn't be there, which was probably for the best. The days leading up to the trip were a blur. I couldn't focus at work. I kept thinking about what I would say, how I would act. I swung between wanting to scream at them and wanting to show them how well I'd done despite them. I barely slept. David suggested we leave the kids with his parents. "This is going to be intense," he said. "They don't need to see that." He was right. As usual, we drove up Saturday morning. I was quiet most of the way, my stomach in knots. David tried to distract me with stories about work, but eventually, he just let me sit with my thoughts. We checked into a hotel first. I needed a home base, somewhere I could retreat to if things went badly. Then we drove to Sam's address. It was a small house in a nice neighborhood with toys scattered across the front yard. As we pulled up, I saw several cars already parked in the driveway. "They're all here," I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. David reached over and squeezed my hand. "You don't have to do this if you don't want to." But I did have to do it. I've been running from this for 30 years. It was time to face it. We walked up to the front door. I hesitated, then rang the bell. A few seconds later, the door opened. Sam stood there, older, but with the same kind eyes I remembered. He stared at me for a moment, then threw his arms around me. "You came," he whispered. "You actually came." I hugged him back awkwardly. Over his shoulder, I could see into the living room. My dad was sitting on the couch, his hair gray now, looking confused. Amelia was next to him, older, but still with that same stern expression. And there was Juliana, standing by the fireplace with a glass of wine in her hand, frowning. Sam pulled back and wiped his eyes. "Come in," he said. "Everyone's here." I introduced David, then followed Sam into the living room. Nobody spoke. My dad's hand went to his mouth when he saw me. Amelia's eyes widened. Juliana's face drained of color. "Look who I found," Sam said, his voice shaking slightly. My dad stood up slowly. Maria, he said, like he couldn't believe it. Is that really you? I nodded, but didn't move toward him. I couldn't. 30 years of hurt stood between us like a wall. What is this? Amelia demanded, looking at Sam. What's going on? Sam took a deep breath. We need to talk about what happened when Maria left, he said. About the truth. Juliana set her wind down hard on the mantel. What the hell, Sam? You said this was a family meeting, not some ambush. It is a family meeting, he replied. And Maria is family. She always was. My dad was still staring at me like I was a ghost. Where have you been? He asked. All these years. We thought. You thought what? I said, finding my voice at last. That I was dead? In jail? What exactly did you think happened to your 15-year-old daughter after you let your wife throw her out with no shoes, no money, and nowhere to go? The room went silent. David moved closer to me, his hand on my back. That's not what happened. Amelia started to say, but I cut her off. Don't, I said. Don't you dare try to rewrite history. You dragged me out of that house and left me on the street because you believed I was some kind of thief. You never even asked for my side of the story. My dad was crying now. We looked for you, he said weakly. For months, we looked. Bullshit, I replied. I came back the next day. I stood across the street from the house for hours. Nobody came looking for me. Juliana hadn't said a word. She was staring at the floor, her jaw clenched. Tell them, Juliana, Sam said. Tell them what you told your friends at the barbecue. She looked up, her eyes darting between Sam and me. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, Sam insisted. Leo heard everything. He told me what you said. At the mention of Leo's name, Juliana's face hardened. Leo needs to mind his own business. This is his business, I said. You ruined my life, then took my boyfriend as some kind of trophy. And now he knows what kind of woman he married. Amelia stood up. What exactly are you accusing Juliana of? I looked her straight in the eye. She planted my mother's heirloom watch in my room. She set me up. She admitted it to her friends last weekend, and Leo overheard her. My dad gasped. Amelia shook her head. That's ridiculous, she said, but there was uncertainty in her voice. Is it? I asked. Think about it. Did it ever make sense to you that I would steal a watch? Me, who never caused any trouble, who kept to myself, who helped Sam with his homework. Did that ever actually make sense to you? Amelia looked at Juliana, who was now visibly sweating. Juliana, she said, what's going on? Juliana forced a laugh. This is insane. She shows up after 30 years and starts throwing accusations around. And you're actually listening to her? I heard you, Sam said quietly. At the barbecue. We all heard you bragging about how you got rid of your stepsister by planting my mother's watch in her room. You laughed about it, Juliana. You thought it was funny. The room went completely silent. My dad was staring at Juliana in horror. Amelia looked like someone had punched her in the stomach. It was a joke, Juliana said finally. I was drunk. I was just talking shit. No, I said. It wasn't a joke. You hated me from the moment I moved in. You destroyed my mother's tools. You spread rumors about me at school. You sabotaged my homework. And when I finally found someone who liked me despite all that, you couldn't stand it. So you got rid of me. Juliana's face was red now. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about, I said. And so do you. Amelia sat down heavily on the couch. Juliana, she said, her voice different now. Tell me the truth. Did you do this? Juliana looked around the room like she was searching for an escape route. Then something in her seemed to snap. So what if I did? She said, her voice rising. She didn't belong here. Dad died, and suddenly this random kid and her father move into our house, taking up space, changing everything. Mom was spending all this time trying to make them feel welcome when she should have been focused on us. I felt like I'd been slapped. After all these years, she was still justifying what she'd done. I was 13 years old, I said. My mother had just died. I didn't ask to move into your house. I didn't ask for any of it. My dad stood up suddenly. How could you? He said to Juliana, his voice shaking. She was a child. We were a family. Juliana scoffed. We were never a family. You were just a man my mom married, and she pointed at me, was just baggage. Amelia stood up too. That's enough, Juliana. What you did, it's unforgivable. Do you understand that? You destroyed this girl's life because you were jealous. Jealous? Juliana laughed. Of her? Please. I had everything. She had nothing. And you made sure it stayed that way, David said, speaking for the first time, his voice cold with anger. You made sure she lost everything, including her father. My dad turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Maria, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Amelia said you needed help, that we should give you space. I looked at him, this man who had once been my whole world. You were my father, I said quietly. You were supposed to protect me. Even if you believed I did something wrong, you were supposed to help me, not throw me away. He flinched like I'd hit him. I know, he whispered. I know. Sam moved to stand beside me. What happens now, he asked. That was the question, wasn't it? What had happened now? The truth was out. Juliana's lie had been exposed. But it didn't undo the past 30 years. It didn't give me back my childhood or heal the wound of being abandoned by my own father. I don't know, I said honestly. I didn't come here expecting anything, really. I just needed you all to know the truth, to look me in the face and acknowledge what happened. Amelia stepped forward. Maria, what we did to you was wrong. Even if what we believed had been true, the way we handled it was inexcusable. I can't change the past, but I am truly sorry. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It was something, I suppose, more than I'd expected. My dad tried to approach me, but I stepped back. I can't, I said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded, tears still falling. I understand, he said, though I doubted he did. But I want you to know, I never stopped loving you. Never stopped missing you. Just not enough to find me, I replied. Juliana hadn't moved from her spot by the fireplace. She was watching the scene unfold with a strange expression, not quite remorse, more like annoyance that her perfect life was being disrupted. What about Leo? I asked her suddenly. Did you ever actually love him? Or was he just another thing you could take from me? Her eyes narrowed. Don't talk about my husband. Ex-husband, from what I hear, I said. That hit a nerve. She took a step toward me, fists clenched. This is your fault, she said. You show up after all these years, and suddenly my marriage falls apart. What did you say to him? I haven't spoken to Leo, I said. He left because he finally saw who you really are. That's on you, not me. For a moment, I thought she might try to hit me. Part of me almost wanted her to. It would be satisfying to finally fight back after all these years. But instead, she grabbed her jacket from the back of a chair. This is bullshit, she said. All of it. I don't have to listen to this. She stormed toward the door, shoving past me on her way out. Nobody tried to stop her. After she left, the atmosphere in the room changed. It was like we could all breathe a little easier. Sam made coffee, and we sat awkwardly in his living room. I told him a little about my life, how I'd survived those first few years on my own, bouncing between shelters and friend couches, how I'd eventually got my GED and found work in IT, how I'd met David and built a new family. I didn't tell them about the nightmares that plagued me for years, about the trust issues that made relationships nearly impossible, about the therapy I still needed sometimes when the abandonment feelings got too strong. They hadn't earned that level of honesty from me. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself watching my dad. He looked older than his years, worn down by life. I wondered if he'd ever been happy with Amelia, if giving me up was worth it. I wondered if he thought about me on my birthdays, at Christmas, during all the milestones of my life that he'd missed. Eventually, it was time to go. We'd said what needed to be said. Sam hugged me again and made me promise to stay in touch. I gave him my address and told him he could visit sometime, meet his niece and nephew. He liked that idea. My dad tried to hug me too, but I couldn't. I shook his hand instead, which felt strange and formal, but was all I could manage. Amelia nodded at me from across the room, keeping her distance. As David and I walked back to our car, I felt not better exactly, but different. Lighter somehow, like I'd set down a heavy load I'd been carrying for decades. Are you okay? David asked as we drove away. I thought about it for a moment. No, I said honestly, but I think I might be eventually. We were almost back to the highway when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me I should. Hello, I said. There was a pause, then a man's voice. Maria? It's Leo. Sam gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I nearly dropped the phone. David glanced over at me, eyebrows raised. Yeah, I managed to say. That's okay. I heard you were in town, Leo said. I was wondering if maybe we could talk. There's a coffee shop on Main Street. I could meet you there in 20 minutes. I looked at David. He was watching me carefully, trying to figure out who I was talking to. I covered the phone. It's Leo, I whispered. Juliana's husband. Ex-husband. Whatever. He wants to meet for coffee. David studied my face for a moment, then nodded. If you want, we can go. I uncovered the phone. Okay, I told Leo. 20 minutes. As we turned the car around, I wondered what Leo wanted to say to me after all these years. I wondered what I wanted to say to him. The boy I'd known was long gone, replaced by a man who'd spent decades married to the person who destroyed my life. But maybe that was the point. We'd both been shaped by Juliana in ways neither of us had chosen. Maybe talking to him would help me understand some part of the past 30 years that still didn't make sense to me. Or maybe it would just reopen wounds that had barely started to heal. Either way, I was about to find out. The coffee shop was one of those chain places with too many drink options and not enough seats. I spotted Leo immediately, sitting at a small table in the corner. He looked different than I remembered. His dark hair had some gray in it now, and he was wearing glasses. But he still had those green eyes. David squeezed my hand. Do you want me to come with you? I thought about it for a second. No, I think I need to do this alone. Maybe you could grab a coffee at that place across the street? I won't be long. He nodded and gave me a quick kiss. Text me if you need me. I walked over to Leo's table, feeling weirdly nervous. He looked up, and his eyes widened a little. Maria, he said, standing up. You look good. Thanks, I said. You too. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before sitting down. He already had a coffee in front of him. I didn't bother getting one. My stomach was too knotted up. So, I said, not knowing where to start. So he echoed. This is weird, right? I nodded. Definitely weird. He wrapped his hands around his cup. I'm sorry about what Juliana did to you. Both back then and everything after. You didn't know? I said. No, but I should have figured it out. He took a sip of his coffee. Juliana always had this story about her troubled stepsister who got sent away. She'd tell at parties sometimes, make it sound like this sad family drama. I believed her for years. I tried to keep my face neutral, but it hurt, hearing that my life had been reduced to a cocktail party anecdote. When did you guys get together? I asked. Not sure I wanted to know the answer. Senior year, he said, after you were gone. She was persistent. He looked down at his coffee. I was young and stupid. I thought her confidence was attractive. I didn't realize it was actually just entitlement. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I heard what happened at Sam's, he continued. Juliana called me after, screaming about how I'd ruined everything, as if I was the one who'd done something wrong. Why did you stay with her so long? I asked. The question came out harsher than I intended. He didn't seem offended, though. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He sighed. At first, it was good, or I convinced myself it was. Then we had kids, and it just seemed easier to make it work than to leave. Juliana was always charming in public, always the perfect wife and mother when others were watching. It was only at home that she showed her other side. What other side? I asked. He hesitated. The controlling side, the mean side, the side that made me feel like I was never quite good enough. He shook his head. I'm not trying to make excuses. I should have left years ago. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me felt bad for him, but another part was thinking about how different my life might have been if he'd seen through Juliana back in high school. Here's the twist. Anyway, he said, that's not why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to apologize, and to give you this. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. It looked old and beat up, held together with yellowing tape. He slid it across the table to me. What's this? I asked. Open it, he said. I lifted the cover carefully. Inside were handwritten notes, old ones from the early 20th century. My mother's watchmaking journal. My throat closed up. I couldn't speak. I picked up one of the pages. Escapement wheel calibration, my mother's favorite technique. The corner was bent, but it was definitely from her collection. How did you? I finally managed. Juliana kept it, he said. All these years. She had it in a box in our attic. I found it when I was packing my things. There was a label on the box with your name. I ran my finger over the pages, memories flooding back. My mother showing me her collection, teaching me about the classic Swiss techniques, promising the journal would be mine someday. She kept it as some kind of trophy, Leo continued. I think she liked having something that belonged to you. That sounded exactly like Juliana. Taking something precious from me, not because she wanted it, but because she knew I did. But then he pushed the journal closer to me. Look at the last page, he said. I flipped to the back. The handwriting was different, shakier. It was my father's. The entry was dated the day after Amelia kicked me out. I know what Juliana did, it read. I saw her take the journal. I saw her plant it. But Amelia won't listen. She sees what she wants to see. I try to find Maria, but Amelia took my car keys. She said if I left, she'd tell everyone I was an unfit father and take Sam from me. I am trapped. I have to choose between my children. God forgive me. I chose the one I could still protect. My world tilted. My father hadn't abandoned me. He'd been blackmailed. Amelia hadn't just been a fool who believed her daughter. She had been an active participant in keeping me away, in controlling my father. I found this tucked inside the journal, Leo said softly. I think your father wanted you to know. The anger I had felt from my father for 30 years evaporated, replaced by a profound, aching sadness. He hadn't been weak. He had been a prisoner. I carefully closed the journal. What happens now? With you and Juliana, I mean. Divorce, he said simply. I've already filed. I'm staying with my sister until I can find a place. The kids are grown, so at least there's that. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want him to suffer. He shrugged. Don't be. It's long overdue. He hesitated, then added, Can I ask you something? Sure. What happened to you? After you left, I mean. Juliana said you ran away, but I never really believed that. I took a deep breath. I hadn't talked about those years much, not even with David. But for some reason, I found myself telling Leo everything. About sleeping in the porta potty that first night, about wandering around town for days, trying to figure out what to do, about the shelter where I stayed until I turned 16 and they said I was too old, about the McDonald's manager who gave me a job and sometimes let me sleep in the break room, about the night classes I took to get my GED, about the community college courses I scraped together money for. He listened without interrupting, tears forming in his eyes. I had no idea, he said when I finished. All those years, I pictured you living with relatives somewhere or in some juvenile facility. I never imagined you were just out there on your own. I survived, I said. Made a decent life for myself, eventually. You did more than survive, he said. You thrived, despite everything Juliana took from you. I hadn't thought about it that way before. I've been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't really considered what I'd built. I should go, I said, picking up the watchmaking journal. My husband is waiting. Leo nodded. Of course. He hesitated, then asked, Would it be okay if I contacted you again sometime? Not right away, but maybe when all this is settled down. I thought about it. Did I want Leo in my life? Did I want any connection to that past? Maybe, I said finally. Let's see how things go. He seemed satisfied with that. We exchanged numbers, and I stood up to leave. Maria, he said as I turned to go, for what it's worth, I'm glad you found happiness. You deserved better than what happened to you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and walked out of the coffee shop. David was waiting across the street. He stood up when he saw me, concern on his face. You okay? He asked. I showed him the watchmaking journal and explained what Leo had given me. We walked back to our car in silence, my mind spinning with everything that had happened. As we drove out of town, I felt strange. Not closure, exactly. I wasn't sure that was possible after everything that had happened. But something had shifted. The weight I'd been carrying for 30 years felt different. Somehow. What are you thinking? David asked after we'd been driving for a while. I'm thinking about calling Sam when we get home, I said. Maybe inviting him to visit us sometime. What about your dad? David asked carefully. I sighed. I don't know. That's more complicated. You've got time to figure it out, he said. There's no rush. He was right. After 30 years, a few more months or even years wouldn't matter. I could take my time deciding what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted with my father. We drove in silence for a while. I kept thinking about Juliana, about how she kept my mother's watchmaking journal all these years, how she married Leo, how she built her entire life around taking things from me and then pretending I never existed. You know what's weird? I said finally, Juliana ruined my life, but I ended up with a better one than she has. David glanced over at me. What do you mean? She's losing everything now. Her husband, her reputation, probably her relationship with her parents. And for what? Because she couldn't stand sharing her house with a 13-year-old kid 30 years ago. Some people create their own karma, David said. I nodded, looking out the window at the passing landscape. I guess so. When we got home the next day, I put the watchmaking journal on our mantle. My kids were curious about it, so I told them it had belonged to their grandmother, my mom. I didn't tell them the whole story of how I lost it and got it back. That could wait until they were older. That night, I got an email from Sam with photos of his family. His wife, Tina, seemed nice in the pictures. They had a 10-year-old daughter named Hannah who looked a lot like Sam had at that age. I showed the photos to David and the kids. "Is that your brother?" my son asked. "Half-brother." I corrected automatically, then stopped myself. "Actually, just brother. He's my brother." I sent Sam some photos of our family in return. It felt strange, but good, like opening a door I kept locked for decades. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized my dad's handwriting on the envelope. I set it on my desk and left it there for 3 days before I finally opened it. It was long, 5 pages of his small, neat writing. He apologized over and over. He explained how Amelia had convinced him I needed tough love, how Juliana had manipulated everyone, how he tried to find me but didn't know where to look. He wrote about his regrets, his shame, his hope that someday I might forgive him. I read it twice, then put it back in the envelope. I wasn't ready to respond yet. Maybe I never would be, but I didn't throw it away either. The following month, Sam and his family came to visit us. It was awkward at first. 30 years is a long time. But the kids broke the ice. My son and Hannah hit it off immediately, comparing video games and YouTube channels. By the end of the weekend, it felt almost normal, like we were just a regular family catching up after too much time apart. Before they left, Sam asked if I'd heard from our dad. He sent me a letter. I admitted. "Are you going to write back?" he asked. "I'm thinking about it," I said. And I was. Not right away, but maybe someday. As for Juliana, I heard through Sam that she'd moved out of state after the divorce was finalized. Leo got the house and most of their assets. Apparently, she'd been telling people I'd shown up demanding money, threatening to make up lies about him if he didn't pay. Nobody believed her this time. Sometimes I wonder if she ever thinks about what she did, if she ever feels guilty. Probably not. People like Juliana don't change. They just find new people to manipulate, new ways to make themselves feel important. But that's not my problem anymore. I have my family, my job, my life. I have my mom's watchmaking journal back. I have a brother again. And I have the knowledge that in the end, the truth came out. That night, after Sam left, I sat on our back porch, looking at the stars. David came out and sat beside me, not saying anything, just being there. I reached over and took his hand. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For being my family when I didn't have one." He squeezed my hand. "You've always had a family, Maria. You just had to build it yourself." I nodded, looking up at the night sky. He was right. Family isn't just who you're born to or who raises you. Sometimes it's who you choose and who chooses you back. I still don't know if I'll ever fully reconcile with my dad. I don't know if Sam and I will stay close or drift apart again. I don't know if Leo will call me someday, or if that chapter is closed for good. But for the first time in 30 years, I feel like I have options, like the past doesn't have to define my future anymore. And that's something Juliana can never take away from me.